Welcome to the HindmanCast, a podcast of the Hindman Settlement School, where we explore the history, culture, and people that make the Hindman Settlement School what it is today, and how this historic institution will continue to serve its mission of celebrating heritage and changing lives in Central Appalachia. I'm Corey Terry.
And I'm Jordan Collins.
And welcome to episode number 19 of the HindmanCast. And if you are watching the video version of this, you will see that we are once again in a new location.
Yeah, I told him that we'd be moving on up continuously, and that's what we're doing. Almost at the top of the mountain now.
That's true. We are literally almost at the top of the mountain. We are higher up in elevation, but probably not higher up in popularity.
Oh, we definitely
anything of that sort.
The way to achieve that is just have a radio station on the main peak.
Yeah. So. We're getting there. Yeah, so I think we're in our official studio now. We are taking over the Priest building here on campus and commandeering the reader room. This is the reader room, right?
It was the reader room. Yeah. Now it's the HindmanCast room.
Yeah, so we have some big plans. We're going to decorate this place up.
It's going to be real cute.
To fit our individual personalities.
Which will be almost impossible.
That's why you have this is what my thought is like we have shelves behind us. You could have your corner and I could have my corner.
Then we'll have the guests vote on who's better.
That way we don't have to argue with each other.
That is a good idea. That is a good idea.
Yeah, our arguments never end well. Anyway, so we got a wonderful episode lined up for you today. We have with us today Miss Jenny Willams, who is the English professor over at Hazard Community and Technical College. And she is also the chair of North Fork Local Foods in Hazard. And as we will talk about later on, she is also doing some fun things with us here at the Settlement School that we have coming up. But we'll save that. So, Jenny, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah.
It's a great honor to be up on the mountain with you guys.
Up on the mountain.
Partway up the mountain. You all aren't really anywhere near the top. I mean, I'm looking out, and we've got a while to go. Next time I come back, I want to be Ridgetop. Ridgetop Studios.
You didn't have to expose us like that.
Sorry.
No,
I'm trying to call you in, not call you out.
Oh. Well, yeah. I just feel attacked all the time.
I mean, me and Jenny walked up the mountain, and I was done walking at that point. So I don't know if I can get any further up there.
Yeah, we'll get Sherpas. Podcast Sherpas.
God, yeah, we need alpacas. Alpaca farm.
I agree. I'm with that. I'm down with that.
Yeah. I almost took the Martha Burns Trail because I felt like it would have been easier than going.
Is that what we took?
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's Martha Burns. We walked up that.
I thought about it.
Who was Martha Burns? Next podcast.
Yeah, next podcast we'll explore
we'll think about
who that is. I don't really know.
We just kind of name things.
But familiar with that one. I forgot to mention that. So what we're going to be talking about today is local food, and I think it was Maggie Boland that said that Jenny is the queen of Eastern Kentucky local food.
I think Maggie Bowling is the queen of Eastern Kentucky local food. So
you can be co-queens.
Co-queens.
Right.
Yeah, that'd be great. So, yeah, we're going to talk about local food here in Eastern Kentucky today and things we have going on with our Foodways program here at the Settlement School. But first, Jordan.
You know what we're going to do. The origin story. So we want to know who Jenny is and how Jenny got to where she is.
Well, I was born at a very young age in Hazard, Kentucky, and I'm the youngest of 6. All my siblings still live in Hazard. My dad was one of the first doctors that came in for Appalachian Regional Hospital, and he and my mom both grew up in Tennessee. So they came to Eastern Kentucky in the late 50s, early 60s, so that my dad could help to start Appalachian Regional Hospital, which was shifting over from the miners' hospitals that were founded by the UMWA. It's a really interesting history. You should learn more about it if you don't know about it, but I'm the youngest of 6, the youngest and sweetest of the 6. Williams.
I'm the youngest of 6 too.
I didn't know that.
Definitely the sweetest.
That's why we're both so sweet. I'm sure.
I'm the youngest and sweetest of 1.
Oh well, that's not as great an accomplishment as Corey and I. But yeah, I was born in Hazard, the youngest of 6. My family loved food. And loved eating. My mom actually didn't really like to cook, but cooked every night. She was a stay-at-home mom, and my dad, like I said, was a doctor. And my dad loved food, and he loved exploring different kinds of food, and he loved cooking and making huge messes, and he loved all kinds of food, from the really traditional foods that he grew up with in East Tennessee to the kinds of foods that we ate as doctors from India started populating Hazard in the 70s, from our friends, the Dahirs and the Khawajas, both from the Middle East. and all the neat foods that they would bring in to our houses, hummus and stuffed grape leaves and kibbe, and delicious curries. So I was exposed to a lot of different food from a really young age, and I was taught that it was really important to try new things and to appreciate new things and to explore new things. And I'm still doing it, I guess.
So on a sidebar, Jenny, you're a chef. I have passion. So you're going to start an Indian restaurant in Southeast Kentucky because there ain't none.
No.
So,
and I would say that I'm not a chef. And I don't even like to describe myself as a cook. I think of myself more as a feeder. So I really love to feed people. Okay. But I'm really not a great cook. Like Jonathan Piercy's the best cook I know anywhere around. He has knife skills. He has an encyclopedic knowledge of food and of how to prepare things and of techniques. And I don't really have any of that stuff, but I am pretty good at finding good food and arranging it in a way that will be pleasing to my guests and serving it to them. So I'm really more about feeding people. And I don't have the skills that it would take to open an Indian restaurant, but I really love Indian food. Yeah. And we've asked that for a long time, right? Like, why isn't there an Indian restaurant in Eastern Kentucky? And I'm not sure what the answer to that is. I think because the best Indian food you can get in Eastern Kentucky tends to be in the homes of people who are from India.
That's true.
So, yeah, but I would love that as well. That would be amazing.
That's just what I need around here.
Yeah,
I think
be great.
I introduced Corey to Indian. Well, legitimate Indian.
Yeah, that was the first Indian restaurant I've ever been to.
In Lexington, and he is...
Well, no, I had been before that.
Well, fine. Maybe.
But the only thing that I eat is chicken tikka masala, so I don't know how much that counts. I think that's like the standard.
Well, and I think talking about Indian food or Mexican food is like talking about American food, and you really can't, right? India's a big country with lots of different cuisines and lots of different things to explore. But what I've always been kind of fascinated with, and Corey and I were actually talking about this a little bit earlier, is how eating foods like that when you're young, maybe, or maybe not even just when you're young. But one of the things I really love about food is I love taking a certain flavor profile from a certain cuisine and sort of applying it to other things, right? So I, by no means think of myself at all as someone who's able to produce any sort of Indian food with any sort of authenticity at all. And I think that I'm always try to be really aware of that fine line between cultural appropriation and appreciating of the flavors of a cuisine, right? Mm-hmm. But so, for instance, one of the things that I really love is Sag Paneer, right? So if you've ever had that dish, it's this really creamy, not really creamy, but silky spinach. And the spinach is chopped pretty finely and it's braised with ginger and other spices and garlic, and it's it's almost like a sauce, right? And then it has this delicious farmer's cheese in it that doesn't quite melt, so it stays in these sort of little discrete bites. It's like one of my favorite things. But I have to confess, and again, I'm not sure if this is cultural appropriation or cultural appreciation, but I hope I veer towards appreciation, because I'm not saying that what I make is at all authentic or even Indian, but I love to take those spices, right? So I love to take mustard seeds, brown mustard seeds, and some cumin seeds, and maybe, some garlic and maybe a little ginger, even some pre-made curry blends of spices, and sort of bloom those in some oil until the seeds start popping a little bit. And then I like to saute fresh local greens. We are so lucky here in the spring and then again in the fall to have access to all these amazing greens, these beautiful baby kales and little tiny collards and spinach and just these beautiful greens, and things that you can gather out in the wild too, like stinging nettle or dandelion greens. And I love to take those and just give them kind of a quick saute. So instead of the beautiful braise that creates these silky greens, I'm coming up with something that's got a little more tooth to it. It's not quite as cooked, but it has those same flavors. And then I like to throw that paneer cheese, that Indian cheese that doesn't quite melt into it. And that's like one of my favorite things to eat. I just had it the other night with my daughter. And so I don't think that that's Indian food, right? No. But I learned those flavors from eating Indian food.
It's like inspiration.
Yeah, exactly. And it's I hope not taking things from other cuisines and other cultures, but being inspired by things from other cuisines and other cultures.
Well, you have sufficiently made me hungry.
Oh, and then you squeeze lemon over it. I left that part out. That's real important. And I don't think that's in the traditional dish, but for me, I really like the lemon squeeze.
This just reminded me of like a spinach artichoke dip or something like that.
It's not though, because the greens. I mean, you look at it and it looks like a pile of sautéed kale or a pile of sautéed whatever with some cheese in it. But then it's got those flavors from the spices that you've bloomed in the oil. It's really. I'll make it for you guys sometime. It's really good.
Yes.
Yeah, Applebee's ain't got nothing on it, Corey.
I hope not.
I think our goal of every podcast is to get somebody to give us something. And
Food.
That's a worthwhile goal, I think. That's.
Yeah.
I endorse that.
We had someone offer something to us last time. I thought I canoodled something. I don't know. I'll think about it. But
I don't know. I don't remember. I have a short memory. But.
You have a short memory.
That's true. That's true. I don't know what I'm saying. Okay. So, Jenny, how, I guess you kind of talked about it so far, but how would you say that you got involved with the local food movement in Hazard and how it's seen such tremendous growth over the past few years?
It really has. And there are a lot of answers to that. One is that, like many people, I eat food and I care about what I put in my mouth and I like to eat and I'm interested in food. So that's one answer. But really, two things kind of happened when I was younger, I think, that have made me be really passionate about food and especially food equity and making sure that everybody has access to fresh, healthy, local food no matter where they live or how much money they make. And those two things are, one, that I have been teaching at Hazard Community and Technical College for 27 or 28 years. It's the only real job I've ever had. And when I first started teaching there, I teach writing, so I can teach anything I want. It's perfect for somebody with a short attention span like me. I can read an article in the morning. If what I'm teaching that day is how to summarize or how to paraphrase or how to document a source, it doesn't matter what the source is, right? So I can literally wake up in the morning and read an article or hear a story on NPR and go in and use that in my class. And so because I'm so interested in food and I love food so much and I love eating it and cooking it and thinking about it and reading about it, I've always used food as a topic in my classes, probably more than I should. I'm sure my students over the years have gotten really sick of that. But this is really seared into my memory. And so when I was younger, in the late 80s, early 90s, when I first started teaching, things were different, right? So the food that you could get at Food City was very different. There was no ethnic aisle, so-called. It was just a little bit different. Organic food was just starting to become really pretty widely commercially available and was still quite overpriced and kind of unregulated and a lot of other things. But at that point, I was becoming very interested in agribusiness and the way that big agribusiness was really hurting our foodways and hurting our food systems. And creating structures that weren't to the benefit of farmers or eaters or anybody really. But I wasn't thinking about equity at that point really. It hadn't. I grew up with a life of incredible privilege. Like I said, my dad was a doctor, my mom was a stay-at-home mom, and I really have grown up with a lot of privilege, and that was something that I wasn't really aware of or didn't think about. It's just how things were. So when we think about, I think, Appalachia and Appalachian culture, we don't always think of me, this kid who had a really privileged upbringing and went to summer camps and went to the beach in the summer. And there are a lot of me's in Appalachia. Like, that is an Appalachian story, too, that I think has gone untold. But I'm digressing a little bit. So anyway, I was more interested with the quality of food than with the equity of food access at that point in my life, because I just didn't know any better, really. I have literally never wanted for something to eat in my life. Never once. There's never once been a time in my life when I have not had food security. And I'm really aware of that now, but I sure wasn't then. So anyway, I was getting off on my high horse about organic milk and how horrible the big dairy industry was and how unhealthy it was for the cows and for the people. And I was just kind of lecturing and really was just up on a high horse. And I remember I had this student, and she had a rough time. Like, she had missed a lot of classes. She struggled in the class. She wasn't doing great because she had missed so much. And I was sympathetic to this, but hadn't really asked her why. I was a young teacher, a new teacher, and probably not a very good teacher. And I don't know that I'm any better now, but I sure try to be more aware of where my students are coming from. But so I was going on and on about how really we should all buy organic milk, and that when we were buying this factory produced milk, it wasn't the best thing for us and our families. And she just got disgusted with me. And she slapped her hand down on the table and she said, listen here, let me tell you something. She said, you want me to go and pay a bunch of money for organic milk? You want me to eat more fresh fruits and vegetables and feed them to my children? She said, I am failing your class because I can barely get a ride here. I live way up in a holler and I don't have a car and I have to count on people to bring me to school and half the time they won't. And when I get my food stamps at the beginning of the month, I have to find enough food to feed myself and my 4 children for the whole month. And I can't be running to the grocery store to get fresh fruits and vegetables every week. For one thing, I don't have enough money to do that. And for another way, I don't have any rides. So don't sit there and tell me I need to spend 3 times as much on some organic milk because you think it's better, because I can't do it. And I was just, astounded. Like she took me down a lot of pegs and I needed to be taken down. I needed to have that awakening and that I needed to be slapped down. Like what I was doing was really shitty. It was really awful to have that kind of privilege and to make those kinds of assumptions about my students and to make them feel bad. Mm-hmm. And I remember that same semester I had a woman write at sort of the end of the semester that she felt really horrible about the fact that she was, this was in response to an article on factory farming or something, that she really felt badly that she was feeding her family these foods that she knew would hurt them. And I felt horrible about that. What right do I have to make somebody feel bad about the food they're feeding their family when they don't have a lot of choice and they don't have a lot of opportunity to do anything otherwise? And so that really kind of started me thinking about food access and about what food costs and about what's available and about how we get it. And it wasn't an epiphany that I just woke up and the next day was really concerned with equity, but it certainly planted that seed in me. And I started really thinking about it. So that was one thing. And another thing is that when my son, who's 24 now, was born, he was born real prematurely, which actually doesn't have anything to do with this story, I guess. But I became a very ardent supporter of breastfeeding and an advocate for breastfeeding. And this was in 1997. And he was at UK in the neonatal intensive care unit. And breastfeeding kind of wasn't exactly the norm. It was fine if you wanted to, but it was like all I could do because he was so tiny and little and he was in this isolette for 3 months and I couldn't hold him or anything. So there was really nothing better to do than to make milk and express it with these breast pumps and store it. Like it was just like, what else was there to do? But I got really interested in breastfeeding advocacy because there were things that at UK that I felt like I was like, I can get more milk if I can sit by his bed and pump and see him. And this is data driven. Like there's research that shows that, and yet you don't want me to do this. You want me to go into this little room that's like a closet. And I think you need to change that policy. And they did change that policy. And I remember there was a doctor whose name I can't remember now. And like she hung a paper mache cow's head on the end of my son's crib just to sort of make fun of me because I was so, in a kind of loving way. But I became involved with breastfeeding advocacy and the rights of women to breastfeed and to help women breastfeed because I think there are a lot of parallels between farming and breastfeeding. It's kind of skipped a few generations here in Central Appalachia, right? So we've sort of lost the ability. They don't teach breastfeeding for the most part in nursing school or in medical school. They just think you're going to somehow pick it up, that there's maybe, a half day on it or a chapter unless that's something that you specialize in, or at least that's how it was in the 90s. And I think it's still pretty much like that. And so this doctor whose name I apologize that I cannot remember, she became a huge breastfeeding advocate, not because of me, but because she kept saying to, there were lactation consultants and nurses who promoted breastfeeding. She kept saying, show me the science, show me the science. And they showed her the science. And so within a couple of years after I had left UK, and I stayed involved doing some grant work with a few different things, but breastfeeding became the norm. And she said, if I knew that there were a medicine that I could prescribe to these tiny micropreemies that would increase their chances of surviving intact, so with fewer developmental delays, with better health, with fewer gut problems, if I knew that there was this medicine that I could give them, I would be remiss if I didn't give it to them. And that's what breast milk is. And so after that point, and I assume it's still this way at UK, I think new moms are expected to at least try to pump to feed their babies because it's so important. I came back, I brought my son home. He's amazing. He's awesome. And I spent some time with the local health departments doing breastfeeding advocacy because there wasn't at that time, and I think still in a lot of ways, there wasn't a lot of support. And so breast milk is not produce, it's not farming, but I still see a lot of those parallels because I was able to breastfeed because I'm privileged. Again, I had the time to do it. I had the money to rent the expensive breast pump while my son was in the hospital. I had a job that allowed me to, close my door and spend time pumping or leave and go home and feed my child. I had the support of my sisters who had breastfed and my mom who had breastfed, which a lot of people don't have. So I was able to do this thing that I knew was best for my child because I was privileged, not because I was making better choices than anyone else or making better decisions. And I think feeding our children is a lot the same way. A lot of times we're able to feed our children not because we are smarter or we're choosing the right things, but because we just have access, I'm able to buy local foods. I'm able to get a CSA from Maggie Bowling at Old Home Place Farm because I can afford it, because I have a good job. And I don't have a good job because I'm a good person and I worked really hard for it. I have a good job because my parents paid for me to go through college and I've had an easy life and I stumbled into it. And so I think having those things, having that kind of privilege and recognizing that kind of privilege, I feel like I've gotten way off topic here, has made me understand that, that not everybody has that, and that it's our job, if we do have the time to do it and the privilege to do it and the opportunity to do it, it's our job to level the playing field, whether that's with access to education or access to good food, or access to health care, or access to breast milk. It's our job to kind of make those things accessible to everybody, because it's not right that some people should have them just because they are lucky. Yeah. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
I think so.
I love the tangent, though.
Which leads me into the next question is, which I think is why you're the queen of Eastern Kentucky local food.
I'm really not. I reject that title.
Is because you have spent so much of your time in life outside of actually inside. I know you've done some things at the community college too, but trying to level that playing field and give access to people. So what are some things that you have done? Tell us about like North Fork local foods, farmers markets things, and all those sorts of things that you've been a part of.
I think a lot of people around here have gardens, and I wish that I'd kept better track of this, but when I first started teaching, I would ask students a lot of times, like, who has eaten something in the last 3 days that you grew or that someone grew? And when I first started teaching, most of the class would raise their hand, and they'd be like, oh, yeah, my granny has a garden, or I have a garden, or and over the years, I started to see that wane, and people started to say things like, oh, well, my papa, he's not doing so well, and he didn't plant a garden this year. It's the first time in a while. Or, we had to move, and we don't really have a spot for a garden anymore. And then I started seeing that start to dip back up a little bit as we started to kind of hit a recession, and the coal industry started to sort of fail, and people were starting to have more economic hardship. People started saying, well, I'm planting a garden. We've planted a garden this year because we need to be able to put that food up. So I think local food has become important, both because it's delicious and wonderful and fun to eat it, and because it's a necessity for a lot of people. And programs like Grow Appalachia, I think, have really done a lot to help people be able to grow food for themselves. So I think more people have access to programs and people that can help them grow food if they want to for themselves. But I think that where real growth has probably occurred is in programs and things that make food accessible to people who don't necessarily want to grow it themselves. Things like our farmers markets. We've seen our farmers markets just explode over the last, 5 or 10 years. The Perry County Farmers Market has just really grown, and it's grown from just a few people selling not much more than bean and corns and tomatoes to a really vibrant market that meets on Thursday nights and on Saturday mornings. And we have things that aren't food, like goat's milk soap and crafts, and we have things that are food.
I bought some of that.
Yeah.
This past maybe maybe a week and a half ago, I bought some.
From our Happy Hens?
I sure did.
From Happy Hens Homestead?
I did. I forgot what
Is your skin nice and smooth?
I haven't used it yet.
Oh, you're going to love it.
Oh, I'm excited.
And so that's really fun, right? And the Happy Hens who sell that soap also grow some beautiful things, different varieties. I bought some green zebra tomatoes from them, and these are little tomatoes that are green, but they're completely ripe, and they're delicious and beautiful. They're growing different kinds of peppers. So we just have a variety of different fruits and vegetables from which to choose at our farmers market. And so there's a lot more variety. And that's wonderful. And I know that the Knott County Farmers Market, which meets on Tuesday nights, has really been growing and getting a lot more vendors. And these are things that I think are important because they make food accessible. Yeah. And I love the programs that we have in Kentucky that make that food not just available, not just here, which is one thing, right, but also affordable. Things like the Kentucky Double Dollars program, which allows SNAP recipients and people with senior vouchers and some WIC vouchers to come in and purchase food and get their dollars doubled, right? So they can come in and swipe their SNAP card and get, for $8 and get $16 worth of produce, basically.
Basically cuts the cost in half.
It really does. And so I think programs like that are really important in getting access to people. Things like our Fresh Stop Market, which we run out of Hazard, and that's a sliding scale pop-up market. It's really not much different from the farmers market, except we have customers who pre-order. So they pre-order, it happens every 2 weeks. They order a week in advance, and they get 10 to 12 different fresh fruits and vegetables, and they get support in cooking those. They get recipes, they get help. And I think that that's been a really beautiful thing because it's exposing people to fresh food who maybe haven't had access to it before or haven't thought about it. And we've been really lucky in Perry County to have the support of Save the Children and of the Mother of Good Counsel Catholic Church, who purchase 20 shares total, and they give those to families who need them. And those are families who may not be acclimated to come to the farmer's market, or they may not be comfortable coming to the farmer's market, or they may not know about the farmer's market. It's amazing to me how many people in our community still don't know about our farmer's markets, and certainly don't know that they can come and use their SNAP dollars there. And so Fresh Stop Market's been a way to kind of reach out to new customers who then might start coming to the market and start purchasing food and start understanding that they can use their SNAP dollars to buy those foods. So I think there's just a lot more concern in Central Appalachia with two things that are both very important. One is food and agriculture as an economic driver. So food and agriculture as a way to provide income to people who need it, and making that food equitable to everybody regardless of their income. And I think those are two big changes that I've seen that are just still changing and still growing, and that those movements and that idea that these two things should happen are seeing a lot of support from a lot of different sectors. And I think that food's been really another thing about local food that I'll say that I love about it, and that I love about working with it, is that food crosses all these different sectors, right? No matter where you fall on the political spectrum, no matter who you voted for, no matter what you do for a living, no matter what you think about politics or the economy or religion, everybody's got to eat. Mm-hmm. And I've never met anybody who doesn't agree that everybody should be able to eat nutritious, healthy, good food, right? We might disagree about how we get that to people, or what our modes of travel are to get it, or how that looks, but everybody agrees on that. And so working with food has been, I think, a very healing thing for Eastern Kentucky, where we've seen a lot of divisiveness over the coal industry and over politics and over things like that. But we can all come together to work to make sure that people get fed. Pretty much everybody agrees with that. And so I think that food's been a good way to draw together a lot of different things and to sort of jump out of some of those silos that we have, because it hits every sector, right? The environment, the economy, healthcare, education, all those things. Food touches all of those things. And so it's been a really great way to sort of bring people together to do work to raise the whole region.
Golly, Jenny.
Every time she talks, it's pure gold. It's so inspiring all the time.
We might have to have you on more often. I don't have to say as much.
I doubt that.
This is why she's the host of our things that we got coming up.
Oh, yeah, Agrilachia?
Because it's just there. It's
I'll just be the cameraman. I'll hold the stick. That's what I'll do.
Yeah.
The stick to beat me with?
No, camera stick. Gotta get them good angles. I'm an angle guy. That's what I'm about. So you kind of answered our third question with how the local food scene has changed. You kind of touched on that. But what do you think still needs to be done? And where do you see local foods in East Kentucky in 5 to 10 years, or where do you hope to see it?
I don't know the answer to that, but I will tell you that I've been really following the news stories about the Colorado River and the water shortages out west. And I think climate change is a huge and pressing concern for all of us because it's really going to drastically change the way that we move through the world. And we need to really get serious about addressing it. But in the short term, sometimes I wonder, and I'm certainly no expert, and plenty of people disagree with me about this, many of them farmers who know what they're talking about and not me who's just running my mouth. But I look at that water shortage out west, and I listen about how, the Colorado River has less water than it's had in I forget, like 50 years or something, right? And if you look at pictures of the Hoover Dam, there are these bathtub rings where the levels of the reservoir have dropped so much, and all these people who are going to be most impacted are farmers. And these are not little mom and pop farmers. These are not Andy and Lindsay, the Happy Hens. These are not Maggie and Will Bowling at Old Home Place. It's big corporate farmers, right? And I feel for them, and I feel for the economic hardship that they're going to face. But I can't help looking at that and saying, why are we growing our food like that? That doesn't make any sense. These huge monocultures that require all these resources to grow. Why are we growing cotton in the middle of the desert? You can't even eat cotton. Why is that happening?
Also, though, these monocultures are a main contributor to global warming.
Exactly.
These fields that used to be covered in grass and patted down for,
right.
It's
a really ugly. It's a really ugly feedback cycle that we've created, and so. Because I'm a horrible, selfish, and opportunistic person, I can't help thinking that maybe this is going to, in the short term at least, maybe this is going to be good for Central Appalachia. I always say that if we want to bring more people, because I really firmly believe that here in Eastern Kentucky and in Central Appalachia as a whole, we need to not just work to preserve our own culture and to create an economy and a place where our children want to stay. Like, that's nice, but I want kids to feel like they can go anywhere. What I want is to create an economy and a culture and a place where people from all over want to move, where people want to come, where people feel that they can live and love and work and have really, really meaningful and joyful lives. And I think that I've always said that if we really want to attract people, that one slogan that we might use could be, come to Eastern Kentucky. We have hardly any natural disasters because we don't, right? We're not really hit by hurricanes. We don't really have too many tornadoes. We get a little droughty from time to time, but we really have I believe that we have a climate that can adapt, at least in the short term, that can adapt to climate change maybe a little more readily than deserts with fields of alfalfa out west can. And so I think that if we look at what's happening with our food systems, we're seeing what so many people, Michael Pollan and so many others, have predicted, and that is that it's going to collapse. It's not sustainable to have these huge agribusiness kind of things feeding the whole country. It's, for one thing, it's completely, as Michael Pollan and others have pointed out, it's completely susceptible to terrorists, right? It would be so easy to just poison our whole country. We see all these recalls, right? And every time beef or, romaine lettuce get recalled, I get up on my high horse again. I should have learned when I got slapped down that first time, but I have been slapped down many times and just keep climbing up. And I'm always like, my lettuce from Old Home Place Farms has never been recalled for E. coli. And my meat from Roaring Shoals has never been recalled because I'm trusting local farmers, right? And so I think we really need to shift our food production in this country really needs to shift to small, sustainable, family-sized farms. This is what Community Farm Alliance, which is a statewide organization that works to support small community or small, sustainable family farms, pushes to. And so I think that what we need to do, and I now will answer this question, is with all these horrible things happening around us, I think we need to work really hard in Central Appalachia to create structures that can support small farmers, however that's going to look. And I do not know the answers to that, but some way that we can help those small farmers to aggregate their food. A lot of the work that Appalachian Sustainable Development over in Virginia is doing, I think, is really important with creating these sort of corridors where we can get food from Central Appalachia out to other places, because I think these smaller farms, that's how we need to go to feed America. We need to start localizing agriculture and making it possible for small farmers to get their products to bigger markets. I'm really excited about some of the work that's being done with Hindman and North Fork Local Foods to purchase local produce and flash freeze it so that it's very minimally processed and get that into grocery stores, right? I want everybody to go to farmers markets. God knows I love them. They're my favorite thing. Whenever I travel, the first thing I do is find the farmers market and go to it. But not everybody has that luxury or that time. And so the more local fresh foods that we can get into grocery stores, that's also going to be really good for people. And I know that sitting on the front porch stringing beans with Granny is a time-honored Appalachian trope and that all of us have learned morals and values from such activities, but a lot of people don't have time. They don't have time to sit on the front porch and string a bushel of beans. Time is a luxury that is afforded to those of us who can afford it, right? And so I think being able to take local foods and offer more minimally processed, but still very healthy, but more convenient foods is really key. You know, if you're working 2 minimum wage jobs trying to support your family, you don't have time to cut up a butternut squash and figure out what to do with it. But if you can buy a bag of frozen butternut squash that was grown right over here on the banks of Troublesome.
With maybe even a recipe attached.
With a recipe attached, and you can figure out, hey, I can dump this into my chili with this local ground beef here, and this is going to be healthier for my family. It's going to spread the chili out a little bit. I'm not going to have quite as much meat, and maybe it's something different, and maybe it'll take a little getting used to, but this is going to be better for my family. Mm-hmm. So I think that figuring out a way to do minimally processed, figuring out a way to make local foods more convenient as well as affordable is really key. And that happens 2 ways, right? We have to, first of all, grow markets for our farmers. And then we also need to grow more farmers to meet the demands of those markets. So we're in a different position, I think, than a lot of industries, because we're not just meeting a pent-up demand. We're creating demand and supply at the same time, and they're feeding each other. And I think we're doing a pretty good job with some of the programs that Hindman has, with things that North Fork Local Foods is doing, with some of the things that Community Farm Alliance is doing. With things across the state and across the Central Appalachian region. I think that we're kind of realizing that and working to do that. So that's where I hope to see local foods in the next 5 to 10 years. I hope to see local foods becoming the norm. I hope to see them becoming more accessible and more affordable. The mechanisms for how to get there, I'm really not sure of, but I'm really, really proud and honored to work with people who have some really good ideas like that. People like Jennifer Weber, who's at North Fork Local Foods. People like Jerry Roll and Laura Smith at the Foundation for Appalachian Kentucky and the Appalachian Impact Fund, who are willing to fund that work to get that food going places. People like Martin Richards at Community Farm Alliance. So I think there are a lot of people who are a lot smarter than me. I just like to cook the food and eat the food and feed it to the people. But I'm really, really, really lucky and blessed, I think, to know a lot of people who are really looking hard at those systems and how we can make those something that can really support both the economy and the health of Eastern Kentucky and Central Appalachia.
Wowie zowie.
I got choked up.
You probably just need a little water.
To kind of go back on that, you said that our food systems were susceptible to terrorism. Not only terrorism, but biological things like disease.
Oh,
so
yeah.
You look at like the orange groves in Florida that have this root rotting disease running rampant. I mean,
last year during the lockdowns of the pandemic and that sort of thing, like a lot of these like larger farms and that sort of thing and slaughterhouses, they couldn't get their workers to come to work, and that's why we had a lot of shortages and things like that. But like the small farms who weren't relying on that they're saying they're having their best years ever.
Yeah.
So it's just like when you're making things bigger, you're more susceptible to bad things.
And I think that's one of the little tiny glimmers of a silver lining in this pandemic, is that it has exposed people to local foods and farmers markets and local producers and growing themselves.
You can't find little chickens back in the height of the pandemic. It's like everybody's getting chickens for their eggs and all that.
And I love that no one can find like canning rings because everybody's canning. So that's I'm good with that. That's a lot better than I don't know, everybody learn how to make crystal meth or something. This seems like a much healthier wave to cross the region.
Yeah, I don't know. It's crystal meth is a pretty strong economy driver. So.
Let's not go there.
Yeah, we'll not hit that route. But what we will do is hit this next question, won't we, Corey?
We'll just
got a lot of editing to do.
Yeah. There's usually every podcast I need to edit something that Jordan said, but I usually just leave it. So
yeah,
all right. So as part of our food waste program here at the Settlement School, me and Jenny have been talking all morning about some awesome things that we have coming up with our Agrilachia program and a live cooking show called What's Cooking Now. So in the past, our Agrilachia program has been a little bit different. It started out as like an on-campus thing, where people kind of come and learn how to cook and that sort of thing. But when the pandemic happened, we had to switch that over to a live stream thing, and it sort of turned into more of a online discussion. But now we're turning it into a sort of documentary TV show. Jenny, do you want to tell us a little bit more about the motive behind it, what we hope to achieve, and what we're going to be doing?
Yeah, I think this is really exciting, and I've liked all the permutations of Agrilachia because, again, I love food, and I love to hear about it, and I love to talk about it, and I think there are a lot of people out there who do, who also care about it. So we have been...
I think you coined that term too, didn't you?
Agrilachia. I like to take credit for it, but I'm really not sure I did. I mean, it's also kind of obvious. You know what I mean?
Just go for it.
Can I go for it? Can I take that?
You're live. So
yes, I termed the coin Agrilachia.
You have the platform, so it's yours now.
But I mean, it's a good term because it kind of makes sense because agriculture is so much of what has defined us historically as a region, and it's so much of what we hope is going to lift us as a region now. So many people are just so interested in it. So we've been talking about how many untold food stories there are in Central Appalachia. And Appalachian foods really enjoying a moment. We've got Ronnie Lundy's Vittles, that won the James Beard Award. You can go to New York to restaurants now and go to Appalachian restaurants and get a tasting flight of moonshine, which makes me roll my eyes 10 kinds of ways. But, people are starting to really look at Appalachian food. And I think there are lots of untold stories. And I think those of us in the region have really been determined to tell the story ourselves this time, right? So for a long time, our stories have been told by others, and we've been reduced to stereotypes and tropes. And it's really interesting if you look at kind of the history of the way that Appalachian people are represented to the rest of America, and the kind of double-edged sword that has always been. So on the one hand, after the Civil War, when so many people moved from the cities moved from rural areas to the cities, right? So that time between the Civil War and World War I, and I'm horrible with numbers, so I can't quote any statistics, but Google it. Like so much of our population moved from living in rural areas where they probably lived close to the production of food to cities where they no longer were living close to the production of food. And so many things changed culturally between those years in the Civil War and World War I. And Appalachia, and one of the things that changed is you had this rise of the middle class, and they had time to do things like read magazines. And you had to put something in those magazines to sell them to the people, right? And so one of the things that happened is that journalists would write these local color stories where they would go into these regions. And a lot of journalists started coming into Appalachia and writing about Appalachia. And this, of course, was around the same time that a lot of geologists were coming into Appalachia and discovering that we had a lot of coal and other things like that. And so as people started to come into Appalachia and as the country changed, right, and westward expansion, was still happening, but America was kind of becoming set in itself. And Appalachia became this sort of two-sided thing, right? On the one hand, we were these sort of noble savages. And the same thing happened to Native Americans, I think, right? That we were these kind of noble people, the people, the land that time forgot, the forgotten people who still had these solid values and family values and, hand-hewn log cabins and, calico dresses and stalwart grannies who passed on these values to their children. And so on the one hand, we became all those things, right? But on the other hand, it's always been really important to the American psyche and maybe to the Western psyche as a whole to be able to define ourselves by what we're not, right?
To be superior
in some way, and to be able to define ourselves by looking at another group of people, whether that's African Americans or Native Americans or Appalachian people, and to say, you know what, they have bad morals and they have sex when they shouldn't, and they're dirty and they eat things they ought not eat, and they're stupid, and they marry their cousins or whatever
But we're not that.
And we've never been that. And so we've tended, and so that, that started happening, and that narrative started being told from the outside. And I think we've struggled ever since to sort of be the ones that tell our own story. And I think that's really happening in the most beautiful ways with Appalachian food. I think we are telling our own story. I think we are getting people like Ronnie Lundy and Kristen Smith and Laura Smith and Elizabeth Englehart and these other scholars who are out there doing this beautiful writing and telling these stories. And I think it's really important Mike Costello over in West Virginia celebrates all these different cultures with food and all these different things. And so we think that there are a lot of stories here in Eastern Kentucky that have gone somewhat untold that we want to tell with Agrilachia. Stories like the stories of the Daugherty family who first came to Central Kentucky. Sru Daugherty came here as a pack peddler and then ended up opening the incredibly successful chain of stores known as Daugherty's. And having these 7 sons, one of whom was the mayor of Hazard, Willie Daugherty, for a while. And thinking about the way that those foodways have influenced our foodways, right? And the ways that those of us who grew up knowing people like the Daughertys and the Kawajas who ran George's Shoe Store and the Almond Brothers who founded Magic Mart, the way that those Middle Eastern immigrants really influenced the way that we eat. That's a story that some people know, a lot of people know, but a lot of people don't know. Certainly when we think about how we want to define Appalachia, we don't always think of Willie Daugherty, the mayor. Who was the son of an immigrant, who started out as a pack peddler. We don't think about the way that they had to order these boxes of food from New York because you didn't have access to things like tahini or even plain yogurt, right? I remember Yvonne Kawaja used to make yogurt from scratch because you couldn't get, I don't even know if the 70s, if you could get any yogurt. That was like a hippie thing, right? You sure couldn't buy plain yogurt in the grocery store. And I remember she would make yogurt from milk, and she had this special pillowcase that she only used to make yogurt. And she would make the yogurt, and then she would strain it to make a cheese that was called Lubbock cheese, and it was like a yogurt cheese, like we see this now in Food City. And she would hang this pillowcase over the sink so that it could drain, and the whey would drain out, and it would create this delicious, creamy, tangy dip, right? And those are stories that a lot of times aren't told, even though now we can walk into Food City and we can buy hummus and we can buy tahini, and you can get stuffed grape leaves on the crazy little the crazy little hot bar that also has chicken wings and taco meat. And so I think
kombucha.
Or kombucha. Kombucha's another thing. And I think that's true with lots of cultures and with lots of stories that have not been told and that need to be explored further. And that's what we really hope to do with Agrilachia, is to kind of dig down into that and ask, how did this come to be? How did you get here? How are you a part of Appalachia? How are we a part of Appalachia? And how have we been shaped by all these different disparate and diverse cultures that we tend not to always think of, or that outsiders tend not to think of when they define what's Appalachia. So that's what we want to do with Agrilachia, is really start to explore those untold stories about agriculture and about food and about foodways and food culture, how they shape us, how they're shaping the future, and just get out and tell some really good stories, I think.
Yeah, so I think it'll be a little bit till we start coming out with these. We're going to spend the fall doing some filming here and getting those put together. But what you can look forward to sooner, we've been talking about it on the past couple of podcasts, is our live cooking show called What's Cookin' Now, hosted by Jenny and Jonathan Piercy. And that goes back a little bit. Can you tell us the story of What's Cookin' Now and what we hope to do with that?
Sure. So What's Cookin' Now started over at Apple Shop at WMMT. And I think the very first host was Amelia Kirby. And it started out as a live radio cooking show. And it went through several different permutations of hosts and hostesses and several different things until Jonathan Piercy and Trisha Watts and I paired up to do it, or tripled up to do it, I guess. And we used to like to say that it was the world's only live radio cooking show that we knew of. And we would follow that up by saying, and if you know of another one, we don't want to hear it. But we cooked stuff up live. So this wasn't just talking about food. This was preparing and producing food in the space of an hour in the opulent studio kitchens of the Apple Shop, which was also known as the break room. So this was cooking on a shoestring. Like, we had a stove that worked sometimes. I remember once we did something. We had too much stuff going on in there, and we flipped a breaker, and Marcy Krim, who worked at Apple Shop at the time, had to stand down by the breaker box and just keep flipping it the whole hour so that we could finish cooking whatever we were cooking. And then they told us, they said, look, you're not going to have a stove next month. Like, it's going to take a while to repair this damage. And so we did one whole show, and the theme of it was just, oh no, we broke the kitchen. And we cooked things that didn't require, I remember, Jonathan, this was now sous vide machines. Home sous vide machines are affordable, and a lot of people own these sous vide machines, and this is a way of cooking stuff, immersing it, sealing it in a bag, and cooking it in water. But Jonathan Piercy, as always, is on the forefront of every food trend, and like I said, he's just got this encyclopedic knowledge of food, and he's just amazing. And so I remember for that show, he did what he called a hillbilly sous vide, which involved his beautiful wife Tamara, a cooler, a kettle, and instant read thermometer. And so he took the the cooler, and he had hot water there, and he had Tamara with the instant read thermometer gently rocking the cooler the whole time to create water flow around the bag, and checking and keeping the temperature constant by adding boiling water to it. And I think I made something in a hot pot, but I'm digressing again. So we had a really good time with that show. We really loved it. And we really miss our old friend Jim Webb, Wile E. Coyote, who would always come and film it. And people would stick around the Apple shop to eat the food that we made. And we had a lot of focus on local foods. Some of our favorite shows were when we would do mystery basket shows, where we would have Maggie Bowling, who at the time was actually with Grow Appalachia over on Pine Mountain Settlement School. And she would bring in a basket full of vegetables, and we wouldn't know what they were, right? Except, it was usually August in Kentucky. You could take a pretty good guess at what was going to be there. And we would come in with a full pantry set up. And then in the space of an hour, the food would be revealed to us. We would figure out what we were going to cook, and we would cook it. So those shows were a lot of fun for Trisha and Jonathan and I, and we really loved it. And we eventually quit doing it because we were all just kind of moving on to different things. Trisha moved on physically to Northern Kentucky, where she's done a lot of really amazing things. And Jonathan and I both just had a lot of other things kind of going on in our lives. And so we stopped doing What's Cooking Now at Apple Shop. And we were really, really, really so excited and so honored when Hindman Settlement School asked us to come over and do a reprise. I think it was part of Agrilachia, right? It was one of the Agrilachia episodes.
Live stream Agrilachia.
And we just didn't know what to do with ourselves. I mean, you really do have opulent studio kitchens. The kitchen's amazing. It's a really pretty perfect setup to do a show like this. You had like 4 different we had camera angles instead of one guy
That's what I'm all about.
Instead of one guy with a boom mic, like holding it down to get the sizzle over the frying pan, and us knocking him out of the way, and people kind of leaping back, because I tend to move my hands a lot when I talk. And sometimes I would move my hands a lot with a butcher knife in them. And so in that tiny little break room, it was kind of packed. And so we're really excited to be working with Hindman to do What's Cooking Now 2.0. We're really excited about bringing in some guests, both to taste our food and to talk about our food and to cook with us, and to exploring some of the exciting things that are happening with food, not just in our region, but I think across the world. So like I said, Jonathan is the person I know who knows the most about food. Apologies to anyone else who's a chef or a cook or food person out there who's listening, but he's just amazing. I remember sometimes on the show he would be talking about something, and I would have to stop him and say, I just want the home listeners, because this was all audio, I just want the home listeners to know Jonathan's not like reading this off of his iPhone or something. He doesn't have notes. He just knows all this off the top of his head. So I'm really excited to get to spend time with Tamara and Jonathan again, and to get to cook with them, and to get into the kitchen. And we've got some exciting things that we're planning, and are just really looking forward to being able to get in the kitchen once a month again. Because for both of us, Jonathan's a doctor, and a wonderful doctor. I remember the first time I ever introduced Jonathan and Tamara to a friend of mine. And she said, so what do you do? And he said something. He said, oh, I'm a doctor. She said, you're a doctor? Like, Jenny literally talks about you all the time, and she's never once mentioned that you're a doctor, because I just so associate him with food. So I think for both of us, for all 3 of us, Tamara and Jonathan and I, food's something that we really enjoy. We love to host dinner parties and feed people and talk about food and think about food. And we're really looking forward to sharing that with the public through What's Cooking Now in Hindman.
I also did not know he was a doctor. That is... that's why.
Well, he's a Renaissance man. He's a musician. He plays the ukulele beautifully. He is a cook. He's a chef. He's a lot of things.
Must be nice to be that type of person.
I know, right?
Yeah,
I feel like I'm a Renaissance man in a way. Like, I do a lot of different things, but they're all just mediocre. But he's really great at them. So.
I'm a jack of all trades, but a master of none.
Yeah.
Same. I feel that in my soul.
Yeah, so that'll be coming up here in a month or so. I think we're going to start. We haven't really set a date yet, but you'll see more about that coming up in September. And we want to thank the Kentucky Humanities Council for their funding of What's Cooking Now for the year. Couldn't do it without them, so we really appreciate that. Jordan.
Here's that.
I'm really excited about this.
I love that. That's what I come here for.
Nailed it.
Good job.
That was perfect.
Last week was a little bit of a spoof, but you'll have to listen to that one and figure out. You're starting this one.
Okay. I said Jordan. What would the title of your autobiography be?
Good food, good eats.
Good food, good eats.
Fair.
No, wait. Can I change it?
Go for it.
Can I have a second answer? I think that I would use as the title of my autobiography our tagline for What's Cooking Now, which is Feed the ones you love and love the ones you feed. I'm going to go with that.
That's what I was going to say. I was like, I was thinking
that's
it could be
better.
that. I'm trying to determine on making the What's Cooking Now logo. Do we want to put that on the underneath it somehow?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so.
Yeah, I think so. Get on it. We need that in a month.
I can do it.
You get that
I can
done?
do it in a week. Quick.
Okay.
So Gordon Ramsay has beef Wellington. Martha Stewart has a 1-pan pasta. George Foreman has steak. What's your dish?
Salad.
Signature dish.
Salad. And that sounds more simple than it is, but Jonathan Piercy once said of Trisha Watts and I that presented with any unfamiliar food, Trisha would find a way to make it into a sandwich and I would find a way to make it into a salad. And I really pride myself on these beautiful composed salads that I make with all kinds of different things on them. No two of them are the same. I make beautiful homemade dressings. I'm really vain about my salads.
I need to have one of them salads.
I like a good
I'm on
salad.
it. I'm on it.
Just think, Jordan. Every time they cook every month, we get to eat.
I know.
That's
yeah,
what I'm about.
yeah.
Last time it was delicious,
Yeah.
and I have missed it immensely. But so we all have scars. So you probably have a real memorable scar. Tell us about how you got it.
So I have a scar. I don't know if you can see it right here at the bottom of my chin.
Okay.
You see it?
I don't
So
know.
when I was a little girl, like I said, I was the youngest and sweetest of 6, and my parents used to drop me off at the pool at the country club in Hazard, the Hazard Country Club, which in the words of John Mellencamp, it was a country club. But they would drop me off and expect my teenage sisters to watch me, and one of my sisters was a lifeguard, and she probably did watch me, but the other ones kind of really didn't. And I remember that I liked to jump off the edge of the pool and spin around. And they said, you better quit doing that. You're going to get hurt. And of course I didn't quit. And I remember I jumped off the edge of the pool and I spun around and I just came down right on my chin and it split open. And I knew it hurt. And I remember I held a towel and I walked around for a little bit and I didn't take it down. And after a little bit, I think it was my sister Annie said, what are you doing? And I said, I hurt my chin. She said, let me see it. And she was kind of mean to me when I was little, although she's real sweet now. And so I took it down and blood just poured down. And so what's memorable about it is really not all that, but the fact that, like I said, my dad was a doctor. And so they took me home and my mother set me up. And my mother was a nurse before she married. And so my mother set me up on the counter. I never went to the doctor when I was little. I didn't have a physical till I was in college. I swear to God, that's true. My dad would just sign those forms you brought home from school. And my mother's whole thing was, if you're not bleeding profusely, then you're fine. Just put a Band-Aid on it and go on. And so she looked at that and she said, oh, that needs stitches. Like, this is a pretty bad cut. So she called my father at the office and she said, Cordell, you need to come home and sew Jenny's chin up. She split it open.
I could have used one of them.
And so my father came home to sew my chin up and I wouldn't let him touch me. I said, no, you can't touch me. I want a real doctor. I want Dr. Fitzy. So Fitz Gilbert is a close family friend of ours. He's still a practicing physician in Hazard to this day. And I refused to let my father sew at my chin, which I'm sure really hurt his feelings. But I insisted that they get the real doctor, Dr. Fitzy, to come over and sew it up. And so for many years after and still today, that is Dr. Fitz Gilbert's nickname is the real doctor.
Isn't there a road somewhere in Hazard called Fitzgilbert Road or something?
There is. That was actually named after his dad.
Oh, okay. I was like, oh, now I know who that is.
But yeah.
Look at Corey knowing obscure road
I know,
names.
right?
I don't think it's an obscure one.
No, that's pretty.
Yeah.
Look at me not knowing prominent road names.
We were in Hazard the other day. You had no idea where you were at in the world, I don't think.
That happens to a lot of people in Hazard.
That is an accurate statement.
I mean, it is kind of a confusing place.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
I still
It's
get a little
It's not laid
confused.
out on a grid, that's for sure.
No, you got to go up a mountain, down a mountain, around a mountain. There's a lot of different directions. I don't know. It's
Absolutely.
confusing. I know where the Walmart is. I know where the Taco Bell is, and I know where the McDonald's is.
Oh, I got to work on you, Jordan.
Please do. I will take any food that.
You need to find out where Shenanigans is and Rudy's Bakery.
Was you with us?
Where's Shenanigans?
We went out there the other day.
Okay.
When we
went Hazard Coffee. Main Street's really
Yeah.
popping right now with
I've
food. Yeah,
been
yeah.
down Main
Okay.
We all
right.
went down to
All right.
Shenanigans the
Okay,
other day.
good.
And
I
got
got the soap. I've been there.
chicken.
Been there,
We
got
had
the soap.
chicken zoodle soup. We
Yeah.
went down to the People's Park, which I didn't know it was called that until Josh
Yeah.
told me.
It's
Josh
really nice.
educates me on Hazard.
That's good.
I tried to feed a cat.
That's true. I got that on video.
I'm sorry I missed this exciting trip to Hazard,
Yeah,
this exciting foray into the...
Well, that was my plans for our meeting when we tried to do this last week. Is we're going to get Shenanigans.
blew you
we're going to go
off.
to the People's Park. Yeah.
We'll go
and-
next time.
Sorry.
We'll get
Okay,
you next
lightning
time.
round. Next question.
Yeah. Lightning round. Quick. Cha-cha-cha. Okay. So tell us a time that you laughed so hard that you cried or had one of those deep belly laughs.
Can I tell you about a time that I laughed so hard that I wet my pants?
Oh, God, yeah.
All right. So when I was a little girl, I was a fervent Girl Scout. I loved Girl Scouts. I loved scouting. My mother was a scout. My sisters were scouts. We were a Girl Scout family. And I was in a Girl Scout troop. And we were over at Camp Nathaniel, which is still around and still a place where kids go. And our Girl Scout troop was there. Liz Buchanan was my erstwhile troop leader at that time. And I was a tiny little thing when I was young, which is hard to believe if you see me now. But I was really, really tiny. And I had these jeans, and they were a little bit too big. And so Liz gave me a little piece of rope to just tie around my. So I had this piece of rope, and I'd tied my jeans. And my friend Tammy Whitaker, who is still one of my closest friends, I consider her a sister today, and Pollyanna Cox, same thing. So they were telling some joke. I can't remember now what it was, but I got so tickled that I couldn't stop laughing, and we both started laughing. All of us were laughing really, really hard, and I had to pee. And so I ran to the outhouse, and I could not get that knot undone. And they were laughing so hard at this, and I was laughing so hard, and I ended up peeing in my pants. And I mean, I was not a tiny child when that happened. I was probably like 12. And neither of them have ever let me forget that moment, which is why it came so readily to mind during this lightning round.
That's solid. I love that. I was just expecting like a funny story, but I love that you told us that you peed our pants and beat your pants. That's peed our pants.
I remember a time I laughed at a friend so hard. I probably laughed for 10 minutes straight at him. I just couldn't stop. I'd start thinking about it again. And it's because I come to the realization that he looked and moved just like Woody does from Toy Story. He didn't find it very funny.
Of course
sure
not. That's the things that are the funniest though. Like you laugh so hard you think you're about to have abs. That's my favorite.
Yeah, I kind of.
My daughter frequently makes me laugh so hard that my stomach hurts and I lose my breath because she's just hilarious. And it's usually things that, like, if I try to tell someone else, it's not as funny to them, but she just absolutely slays me on the daily. I feel really lucky to live with someone that makes me laugh so hard my stomach hurts almost every day. I think it's important. It's important to laugh.
It is important to laugh. I don't think I've had a real hard belly laugh in a while. No, God. It was when we were at the Starbucks. Made Corey so mad. He was just fuming mad. And I was laughing so hard and could not stop. And he was getting madder.
Why was you laughing, Jordan?
I was like Corey said something real dumb. And I said, you know what, Corey? I figured it out. You're just a dumb guy. And I laughed for like 30 minutes. And the more I laughed, the angrier he got. And I laughed even harder. It was just the best time. Edit that out, Corey. Have fun with that.
No, it's staying. Just so people can know how terrible you are.
Oh, you know what?
You ruined that whole day for everybody on that trip.
By making fun of you?
You did something to Josh later, and he hated you all the way home.
That's fine. Whatever. I had a good time.
Yeah,
great day.
You boys need to play nice.
We don't.
We have a hard time. You finish this up, Corey.
All right. Last question. If you could switch places with anyone, who would it be?
Living or dead?
Sure.
This is like when you go to those job interviews and they ask you a question, you know what the answer is supposed to be? Like at a job interview, they'll say, what are your weaknesses? And you say, weaknesses? Well, I haven't thought about it. I guess I just work too much. I just
my
give too much
weaknesses are
of
my
myself.
strengths.
Right? So this is like that. Like I know the answer's supposed to be switch places. Why? I wouldn't switch places with anyone. I want to just be myself and never be anyone else. But really, who would I switch places with? Living or dead makes it really hard because there are so many people, that I'd love. I love to, with almost anybody in the past, because I'm always just really curious about what things were like in the past and what things looked like. Like, what did Hazard look like before there were white people there?
I want to go back in time just when, like, the downtowns of all these towns were just bumping. Stores everywhere.
That would be fun, too.
Yeah.
But as far as a person who had experiences, it would be fun to be Alice Roosevelt for a day, maybe. Would I have to stay? Would I have to switch places with I need more parameters. Would this be a permanent switch or just like a daytime thing? Or would I get to go back to being me?
Would it change your answer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
I'm going to pull from a Gravity Falls show.
Like, it'd be fun to be Alice Roosevelt for a day, but I think she had to wear corsets, and I cannot get behind that on a regular basis.
Well, who would it be every day then? If you could just switch.
If I had to just not be me anymore and be someone else.
Yeah.
If there was a magic rug, scientific rug that you like shimmied on it with your socks, it created electrical current, and you touch somebody and you turn into them, who would you be? Who would you go touch?
Wow. Maybe my daughter, because she still has all the things to do, like her life is nothing but open possibilities for what she can do. So maybe my daughter. That's a hard one to answer because
you'd have to switch. So she'd get your life.
She probably wouldn't like that. But she'd probably be better at it than I am, to be honest. You know, and that is hard because you think a lot about like things that you would have done differently in the past, or if you could go back and relive your life, what you would do, or and you really do. Like I wouldn't change. I really wouldn't change my life, right? I love my children. I mean, I've made some really bad decisions in my life, that's for sure. But you know, they brought me to the place where I am, which is a really good place. So that I sound now like I am just giving that answer that you expect everybody to give, but I really would be hard pressed to switch forever. But now if I could pick like a roster of people to switch to just be for a day, I'd have to think about that a little bit. Because being somebody else is really weird. Thinking about who you'd meet is an easier question. So that's a good twist on that. Who would I actually be? That one's a lot harder. And I'm trying to think of people who have done things that I want to do so I could experience doing that. Amelia Earhart maybe, or...
Yeah, but then you got to get eaten by crabs in the Caribbean, and that's just...
I think she's still living somewhere probably. And
You just do it before that happens. You switch
somewhere.
back.
I think she's living somewhere up in Topmost, Kentucky.
Oh, yeah,
perhaps,
for
possibly.
sure.
Yeah.
You should come to Topmost, Kentucky, and come see Amelia Earhart.
Yeah. Would she'd be dead now, right? When was she born?
Oh,
I don't know who we're talking about.
Amelia Earhart?
Isn't this
First
person
woman to fly?
Okay, that's what I was thinking. Is like, didn't this person like fly a plane or something?
Yeah. Oh, God. What are we going to do with him?
I don't know.
Yeah.
As much as I don't know about hazard is what Corey doesn't know about history. So
Yeah. You remember all the facts of history, and I remember where to go
yeah.
and what we're doing this day. You don't.
Well, who's winning this time?
Or maybe I'd be like some artist who, because I don't have any talent, and maybe I'd be an artist who could, I've always thought it would be lovely to be able to sing. Like my friends who can sing well, I always say, if I were you, I would just sing all the time. Like I'd never talk to anyone. I would just sing, and I can't sing at all. So maybe it would be fun to be some singer, Carole King, or
Michael Bublé.
maybe not Michael Bublé.
I'd be Mike Hranica.
Who's that?
He's the vocalist for my favorite band called The Devil Wears Prada.
There it goes.
And I think his writing is just touches me, and I wish I could write like that. I wish I could scream and be the front man of that band because it seems so fun.
Live your dreams, Corey. You
I
can
try,
do it.
but I can't. I can't do it.
You can.
I don't even know how to.
You say you want to scream every day.
I don't. That's true. I can scream,
I
but
feel like there are many things to incite you to scream.
Yeah.
Jordan incites me to scream every day of my life.
You're welcome. I'm trying to make you follow your dream.
Yeah, I think he's supporting your dreams.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay, we should wrap this up because Jenny has a board meeting in 5 minutes.
Oh gosh,
she has to
I do.
get to. So, Jenny, we thank you so much for coming on the podcast today, and can't wait to eat all your delicious food that you cooked for us.
I
It's
always
gonna be
say that
great.
I have a collective crush on the entire staff of Hyman Settlement School, so I'm really excited about anything that's going to get me over here more often. So, yay.
It's going to be fun. So,
Love the podcast. It's always awesome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are you an avid listener? I don't mean to hold you.
Are you going to quiz me?
No.
Yes, I'm an avid listener.
Lit, because I don't think I remember all the episodes, and I was there for all of them.
Okay. Once again, thank you for coming on.
I'm just going to tell the audience. So with an initial drop, Corey wanted to go crazy, and I decided to shut him down on that.
And I did. And I look over and he's just sitting there staring at me.
So this is a reshoot because Corey's bashful.
Yeah.
So I've accomplished the same thing twice. So congratulations.
So maybe someday we have some deleted scenes. That'd be a good deleted scene to have.
Oh yeah,
We got lots of content for that.
I'm sure we do. You're welcome. But yeah, if you want to get involved with the Hyman Settlement School, you know it's that time for our announcements. Forgot to mention that.
Announcement time. Oh yeah, we forgot to say thanks, Jenny. Thanks again, Jenny,
Oh, yeah,
for coming.
Jenny.
It was a good conversation. Fun times.
I got a long phone call, so I'm a little tired, but
Yeah, that phone call.
it was intense. But we won't go into that. So if you want to sponsor a kid from birth to age 5 with a monthly book to create a library for them, you can sponsor the Imagination Library for $30 annually to sponsor a child. And you can go to Hindman.org/imagination library to help a kid learn how to read and give them a library.
Yeah. The little engine that could.
Yeah, that's the starter book.
It's the starter book.
Birth age.
We got our second one the other day. I don't remember what it was called, but it was like little pixelated pictures of trucks and stuff.
Oh, that's called Trucks.
Trucks.
I'm pretty sure it's just called Trucks. I remember looking through them.
My 1-year-old was happy to read it, though.
There's also Llama Llama. That whole series is on there for some reason. It's great. I love it. Love Llama Llama.
My child's favorite book is Brown Bear, Brown Bear.
That's a solid. Hungry Hungry Caterpillar is a solid too. I think that's in that group. So if you want all these great literary giants in your home or in someone else's home, then you should sponsor a child for $30 annually.
Yeah.
And again, that's at Hindman.org/imagination library.
And since you said sponsor a child,
Oh, yeah?
I just feel like this is a good segue. So maybe you might want to sponsor us.
Oh, my God. I'm not going to do a plea on the podcast, but yeah, I like money. We both like money.
I'm not asking for money.
Uh-huh.
I'm asking for swag, things of that nature.
Oh, yeah. Like Mandy, that's who I was thinking about earlier.
I talked to Mandy the other day, and she has us. I bought a mug, and she was like, "Oh, I have you a different mug coming." So she's got us hand potted mugs coming.
Because we will plug you.
Yeah,
every opportunity and shamelessly.
If you have a business that you would like to have mentioned on our show and promoted, we will do anything for a little bit of swag.
Yeah, just contact us or drop off the swag. We're very much a quid pro quo kind of podcast. I think we give and you get. So
yeah. I was trying to interpret your Latin there for a second.
Quid pro quo.
I was like, I've heard that before. But
I'm not going to get into politics, but it was a big deal.
Yeah, it's like it's like something you do in Congress or something. I don't know. I just heard that a lot.
You get and they get, and you get this for that. That's basically what it is.
Scratch my back and I'll scratch yours.
Basically.
Yeah.
So we need some back scratches.
Is that the more accurate translation of that?
Basically, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what. I didn't take Latin, and it served me well.
I took Greek. Didn't serve me well. Yeah, anyway, sponsor us. As I mentioned earlier in the podcast, we're going to get some shelves here behind us that I think I mentioned this anyway.
It's going to be real cute.
That could be nice decor behind us instead of this big window that's kind of like shining lots of light in on us that doesn't look good.
Yeah, being backlit's wonderful.
Yeah, and we want some cool stuff on that. So you could have if you got a business or something, you could have some cool things sitting on this shelf behind us.
We're also going to cover our table in stickers, probably, maybe.
If you have some cool stickers that you would like to send to us, we would stick it on our stuff, on this table. Yeah. Our listeners, we want our listeners to be a part of this podcast in some way.
And we might even set them at their desk and they're like, oh, I know that business, and you get a free mention. So
yeah,
stickers are always welcome.
Stickers, swag. Sponsor us.
We've gotten very off topic, Corey.
Anyway, that was an announcement.
Oh, was it?
I feel like it's always an announcement that needs to be had.
Okay. We'll always ask for more stuff.
Yep.
It's our brand.
Yeah. Anyway, we also have Keeneland coming up here. I said that weird. Keeneland coming up soon. Our annual day at the races at Keeneland coming up on October 21st, and you can get tickets for that at Hindman.org/races. And come join us at Keeneland. Yeah. Watch them ponies run.
And as always, we want to thank our very generous. That's good. We're both having issues. That's solid.
That's an issue.
But see here, it's Jane and Philip Bellamy in Malibu, California. They gave to the school, so we'd like to thank you, Jane and Philip. And also Nancy Flask in Michigan gave to the Imagination Library and helped a kid build their own personal library. So thank you very much, Nancy. And
we also have the Gold Trail chapter of the DAR, which is in Roseville, California. California coming in strong today, giving us that California love.
California.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were going to play it, but...
Know how to donate. Good.
We're not going to... I'm itching to do it, but I won't. I won't.
Yeah, we may have been singing a little song beforehand, and I wish we could play it, but then we'd get copyrighted.
Yeah, and take us down everywhere.
Yeah. All right. we hope you enjoyed this episode. And I'm so out of whack right now.
It's fine.
I feel like I'm forgetting something.
Now, what you are, Corey, is Corey Terry. Remember, that's how we end these? I'm Corey Terry.
I'm Corey Terry.
And I'm Jordan Collins.
And we'll see you next time.
There we go. We got it. The HindmanCast is brought to you by the faithful and generous supporters of the Hindman Settlement School. For over 100 years, we've been celebrating heritage and changing lives in Central Appalachia. If you're interested in supporting the work of Hindman Settlement School, you can go to our website at www.hindman.org, or you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at the handle @HindmanSchool.